So in our second set of notes, we are going to talk about more complex problems that have numbers and variables, fractions, and a bunch of positives and negatives. So our first step, when you see a problem like these below, is to separate everything and rewrite it as a fraction. The second step is to flip fractions with negative exponents. Lastly, you're going to multiply across the top and bottom of the fraction. So let's try example number 1. First, I'm going to separate everything into fractions. And when you see numbers and variables next to each other like this, they're always being multiplied, even if you don't see the multiplication sign. So step 2 says flip fractions with negative exponents. Well, 18 is negative, but it doesn't have a negative exponent. A has a positive exponent, but B has a negative exponent. So I'm going to flip B. This will now give me negative 18 over 1, a squared over 1, and 1 over b cubed. Notice that the 3 is now positive. My last step says to multiply across the top and the bottom, so that's what I'm going to do. Negative 18 times a squared times 1 is just negative 18a squared. 1 times b to the third is just b to the third, and that is my final answer. In our second example, we have a fraction. I'm still going to separate these into two separate terms. So I'm going to do a to the negative 1 over 1 because it's in the numerator, therefore the 1 will be in the denominator. B to the negative 1 is going to have a 1 on top because it's in the denominator already. Both a and b have negative exponents, so I'm going to flip both of them. So a to the negative 1 becomes 1 over a to the 1, and 1 over b to the negative 1 becomes b to the 1 over 1. In my third step, we multiply across, giving us b over a. You can write to the first power, but you don't have to. They're the same thing. In our last example, we are going to do the same. So we separate 3, we separate b, and because they're in the top, their 1s are on the bottom. We separate negative 5, and we separate c to the negative first power. We only have one fraction that we need to flip, and that's going to be c. So I'm just going to rewrite that here. This will become c to the first, and this will become 1. I'm now going to multiply across the bottom and the top. 3 times b times 1 times c is 3bc. 1 times 1 times negative 5 times 1 is just negative 5, and that is my final answer.